This is episode 294 of Mitolife Radio. I'm Matt Blackburn, and today I'm interviewing Brian Richards of Sauna Space. Sauna Space is a combination of heat or sauna therapy with light therapy, photobiomodulation. There's a lot of debates that are ongoing in the health space, as there always is, with respect to light therapy and which form is more effective. Is it far infrared, mid infrared, near infrared? Is it visible red? Is it best to have full spectrum and combine them all like the sun does? To me, I like them all, and I like actually experiencing them separately. Brian makes some compelling points in this conversation. The one that really stood out to me is just the time efficient use of sauna in the device that he created, especially with a 7-bulb configuration, but even a 4-bulb configuration, getting a complete sweat without having to preheat the unit in 15 to 30 minutes, roughly, versus the wood burning sauna that I've been using 100% off grid for several years. I have to preheat it, I have to light wood, start a fire. It takes probably 20 to 30 minutes to get up to a hot enough temperature to make me sweat. And the whole process is minimum of 1 hour, but it's usually an hour and a half. So it's a lot of time. And that's great if it's a social thing, if you're with friends or loved ones, and it's more of an experience, then time isn't an issue. But if it's just yourself, I think Brian had a great point that the Sauna Space is the fastest way to go. So in this conversation, Brian talks about how he got interested in light therapy. He talks about Dr. Kellogg and the book that he found called Light Therapeutics. He talks about the benefits that he experienced working with this type of light, curing his insomnia, improving his cognition, wiping out his brain fog. And then we get into some fun details about the technology. I ask him his thoughts on sun exposure and the potential harms of ultraviolet light. He talks about the protective effects of near-infrared light, which is more than 40% of the sunlight spectrum, and how that actually helps to counteract damage of not only UV light, but also blue wavelength light. So he talks about how you can use his glow bulb, which is a single bulb, in your home, in your living room, your bedroom, your bathroom, to actually mitigate, especially in a hotel context, the harsh lighting that's often used. I asked Brian how often he uses the sauna, the general benefits of the sauna. He talks about heat shock proteins. He talks about what makes his bulbs different from Tractor Supply chicken bulbs. I actually have Brian Hoyer just down the street from me here in North Idaho, and he was actually the one that convinced me to get back on Sauna Space because he helped custom design the Sauna Space bulb, and it is absolutely different from your Tractor Supply chicken light. Brian talks about how he designed the Sauna Space enclosure, the grounding mat, the silver lining, if you want the full EMF protective experience. I asked him what lighting he uses in his house, and I found his answer really interesting. I asked him about his mineral supplementation, if he takes any binders, and then I asked him a few listener questions, including, do you need to wear eye protection? Where can I buy incandescent lights? And what are the best supplement synergies to use with incandescent light to promote tissue healing? So let's jump in. Here is Brian Richards. Okay, we're here with Brian Richards. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Matt.
Yeah, I've been familiar with your brand for a while and experimented with it over the years at health conferences and played around with incandescent light therapy. I think like a lot of people in the health space, I got into LED light therapy first, probably, I don't know, 8 years ago, something like that. And really nice using it in the winter and felt really charged up. And, then getting into Ray Pete's work, and he was really big into red light therapy. And it's just a fascinating modality. I talked to a lot of people up here in North Idaho that kind of dabble in natural health, and most of them have never heard of photobiomodulation or light therapy. And it just kind of blows my mind that people kind of stop at like tanning beds
Yeah.
and vitamin D lights.
Yeah.
So how did you get involved in this area of research?
Well, I was research on my own body. I had some health issues. I had insomnia and acne and a host of other nagging issues that were related to adrenal fatigue, just being toxic, like a lot of mind racing. I was lethargic, kind of irascible. I didn't feel right. And I was recommended to take some drugs by some doctors. Thank God my mother is a general practitioner who's much more functional and wellness oriented. And she's really cool. She was prescribing, I grew up in Montana. So she was prescribing vitamins in the 80s in Montana. So she's like way ahead of most people, way ahead of her time. It's in many ways and still practices to this day. So she said, Brian, you're probably toxic. You need a sauna. So I was intrigued by the recommendation and I did research online and there's some amazing benefits we'll talk about to sauna, really tremendous actually. And at the end of my research, I found this book by this guy, Dr. Kellogg, called Light Therapeutics. And so right after light bulbs were invented, he said, there's something special about these light bulbs. I'm going to make a sauna out of it and try it at my clinic. And so he describes this in a book that was published in 1910 after he tested his electric light bath, is what he called it, on like 50,000 chronically ill patients, over 200,000 log sauna sessions. It's a very in-depth book. He was able to heal every chronic illness that he came up against and other things too, non-chronic issues like snake bites and wounds and other things. It's a fascinating treatise that you can read online, and it's been lost in time. Unfortunately, with this is turn of 20th century. There's actually a cohort of doctors who are using electric light bulbs for healing. Dr. Gaudiali, Dr. Dinshaw, Dr. Babbitt, there are others, contemporaries of Tesla. And this all kind of gets destroyed with the publication of the Flexner report, the rise of the AMA and the FDA. And it's all like swept under the rug along with so many other natural healing modalities that were thriving in America. So it's forgotten for a long time, but it's still there. You can read it. And he was like, look, there's something special about this light. It heats the body up a lot more effectively than a traditional sauna. And additionally, there's some particular healing quality that it has. And he didn't know what it was. He didn't know about mitochondria, as we know nowadays, red light therapy, near infrared light therapy. He just knew that it was bringing incredible results and it was very safe. So he was into a lot of things. Some things were maybe not as effective, but he nonetheless was really on the vanguard of testing a lot of things. He was doing like cold therapy, not cryo, but cold therapy, vibration therapy. A funny story, his brother is the guy who invented Kellogg's cornflakes. So it's the same Kellogg family. This was the light brother. The dark brother invented the cornflakes because they thought that out of control male libido was a problem. And so they invented this brand boring food for men to eat. And boy, have they succeeded. So anyway, same family, but the good guy, he writes this. I read it and I was like, cool, I'm going to build my own. I'm a tinkerer. And I built my own electric light bath. I used it right before bed, had this amazing sleep. Used it the next night before bed, same thing. Like no more insomnia, just like that, like at the snap of my fingers. And And so I was like, okay, I'm all in. I'm going to use it now. And I used it every day almost for many, many months, probably like half a year. And at the end of that, I realized, well, I noticed during it, but particularly at the end, I was like, wow, everything that I was complaining about is gone. My skin, my energy issues. I had more patience. My cognitive function had improved. I realized retrospectively that I had brain fog. I wasn't really aware of it. It's just pollution in the brain, pollution in the nervous system. So I was fundamentally astounded really at how easy it was because I didn't do anything. I just was being. And so that kind of reinforces my growing perspective of health, that the root cause of all disease is disharmony in the internal and external environments. And our within us is a universe of healing and tools and unlimited power, limited energy to take care of almost everything we can come up against. The constitution of the human species is unique, really, among all species on Earth, especially larger animals. And so there is nothing we're born with. There's nothing genetic. It's all this disease is a function of either the external environment creating disharmony or internally us ingesting things that don't belong to us, things that aren't ours, poisons of many types. And they can be people too. People can be, energy vampires. So we got a lot of toxins around us. And I was like, cool. And I got invited basically to make it for a few friends, family, so forth, kind of doing it as a side gig. Meanwhile, I'm trying to build a rental real estate empire. That was a total failure because I am just kind of a nice guy. I don't like being a landlord. And so this was on the side. And then I had an early customer call, and my sauna was, she had been using the sauna for 3 months, and she called crying with tears of joy. And she was like, no, you don't understand. I developed this autoimmune condition. It was like fibromyalgia, and she lost her job. She couldn't leave her home. She was in so much pain. Her family relationships were stressed. And she's like, you don't understand. I have my whole life back. Like, my symptoms are gone. I got a job again. I'm, in and out of the house. I'm pain free. All my relationships are like amazing now. And it brought tears to my eyes too. And I was like, whoa, I am not doing this is what I need to be doing. I need to be doing Sauna Space, which wasn't called that in the beginning. And so I kind of just dropped my tools in the house I was working on, which I ended up selling, not fixing up. And I started the company, got a business loan. This was in 2013. So it was like a year and a half after I started making these for people. And that was the start of it. I was looking for a solution for myself. And it turns out that I've created a solution that, is based on this time honored concept that has over 120 years of safe use testing on humans that is basically applicable to everybody. Going back to my root cause definition, like, we need to get the poisons out of us because they disrupt function in our body, and they disrupt energetic and electromagnetic function of the body. And then we need to reoptimize the damage that's occurred and like get things right again. And sauna does both those things. I had no idea. I didn't know about light therapy. This was 2013. I had started to hear about it, but I didn't understand it at all. I just knew that this was like a more effective sauna. It made you sweat faster. It was, and then I was like, worked on the design, for the last 10 years. So now I'm like deep in the research. It's really fascinating. More and more research continues to come out about the benefit of sauna. And of course, red light and near infrared light, which we'll talk about, is so well researched now. And both of these things, if I'll conclude with this, they're these simple things that are so powerful for us. Perhaps the most powerful things, a discipline of daily cleansing and remembering that we're beings of light. And light is not just our fuel, it's our means inside of our body of healing and so many other things. Like, more than anything else we could possibly consume, the light is the number one nutrient. And we are really beings of light, not just spiritually, but physiologically, on all levels of our state of being. We're totally beings of light. So this kind of slow aha happened over time. And now, yeah, like there's, many sauna products you could choose from. As you mentioned in the beginning, there's so many LED light therapy products, and most all of them are great. But there's something here that's fundamentally different that we seem to continue to have success in helping trigger people's healing ability inside and serving a need that continues to grow.
That's awesome. Well, before we get into some of the details that you brought up, I definitely want to go down a lot of avenues. You mentioned heliotherapy before we hit record, and I think in Europe it became quite popular. Was it solariums? And they would put kids out in the sun for not only rickets, but psoriasis and skin conditions. It's funny, we have kind of a similar path or upbringing with the brain fog and the acne. I had eczema, and enzyme therapy actually helped me a lot, but light therapy significantly did as well.
Yeah.
But where I'm going with this is I came from the quantum health world, and I've since backed away from that because I was really heavy into that, don't miss a sunrise and sunset, cold thermogenesis at noon, do that at solar noon and be grounded as much as possible and basically act like a tree, be grounded as much as you can and be out in the sun as much as you can. And I think I've heard you say in interviews that there are, and people argue this, there are downsides to natural, full spectrum sun exposure. And we call that a sunburn or oxidative damage in the skin or photoaging that you can't argue that it causes wrinkles if you overdo it. Right. So that's the UV, the ultraviolet part of the spectrum. But I just wanted to kind of talk about the difference. I'm not going the direction of like artificial is better or, your devices are better than the sun, but there's a time and a place for both. Right. And it's definitely possible to do damage and age faster from thinking more is better with naked sunbathing, like I used to believe.
Yeah. I love the term heliotherapy. It's the therapy of the sun. It's our ancestors didn't really understand it as therapy. They just engaged in it as a means, as a way of living, getting lots of sunlight every day. And so, what's the challenge with the sun? It's what you mentioned. The ultraviolet and blue wavelengths are very high energy. The ultraviolet light is ionizing, so it causes mutations in our DNA. Blue light, as we know now with all the home LED lighting, is quite toxic because it's very high energy. It causes stress through radical production. So does that mean the sun's bad? No. The sun, though, should be understood. The spectrum of the sun, the solar spectrum, should be understood. What is the solar spectrum? It's not just blue and ultraviolet. It's in fact what we call full spectrum light. So full spectrum light is a little bit of blue and ultraviolet and a fair amount of visible light and some amount of red. And the majority of the sun is in this unseen band of light called near infrared. It's like 43% spectrally near infrared. But in terms of the power you absorb from the sun, because near infrared light is the deepest penetrating of all the sun's wavelengths, over 70% of the power of the sun is in this near infrared band. So this is the unseen band of light that's just beyond red light. And then there's also some amount of mid infrared and a very small amount of far infrared. It's like this bell curve shaped spectrum. You can see it on our website and our Learn Center, Sauna.space. So when we talk about the sun and that sun's hitting us, it's all of those wavelengths at the same time in that natural power distribution that we love. Being in front of the sun for most people is like, it feels amazing. What happens is the ultraviolet light, the little bit of ultraviolet and blue that's hitting your cells, there's some vitamin D response from ultraviolet, so that's good, but it's also mutating you at the same time. It's stressing you out. With that little bit of ultraviolet and blue, you get this huge dose of near infrared, some red, but particularly near infrared is going into the brain and the deep tissues. And the near infrared activates all the benefits we talk about with light therapy, but in general is basically counteracting any of the damage that ultraviolet and blue cause. And it can do this up until a certain point. And there's other caveats to consider. So the sun is great We all want to get a lot of sun each day. We want to get early morning sun. You mentioned some of the ancient biohacker tips, like early morning sun, grounding. These things are obvious, really. But there's are some issues with the sun because of our modern context. And one of those is seed oil. So seed oils, polyunsaturated fatty acids, represented a couple percent of the human diet like 100 years ago. Now it's like almost half of all the fat that's consumed in the SAD diet, the standard American diet, is these seed oils, basically, of different kinds. The seed oils have double bonds in them that are easily oxidized. So when the body's full of seed oils, because we're eating fast food and processed food all the time, we actually sunburn a lot more quickly. We're more susceptible to the high energy wavelengths of the sun. So the near infrared light has a lot more to do. And I would say it's not able to keep up necessarily with the high frequency wavelengths. So if we have a lot of seed oils, we can't be out in the sun as effectively as long enough to benefit from it because of this vulnerability that is due to this terrible diet that, unfortunately a lot of us eat nowadays. The other thing is our ancestors were mostly naked when they went out in the sun. They weren't out on the farm, or they weren't out playing soccer like with shirts on. They had like little loincloths on, and that's about it. So they're getting lots of this healing near infrared light into all the organs of their body, not just on their face and their hands. When we interact with the sun in that way, we get a lot more benefit to it. But what do we do if we have a lot of seed oils? What do we do if we don't have access to sunlight, or we're clothed all the time? The average American gets like 7 minutes of sunshine a day nowadays. And I would say many of us, maybe most of us, are not eating like these perfect diets. We have dirty water. We have electromagnetic stress, EMF toxicity, a lot of other things. And we just work hard a lot and maybe don't take care of ourselves or invest as much in self-care as we should. So what do we do? So if we can't engage and mimic the experience of our ancestors had with sunlight, why not use available technology as a replacement? And so that's what Sauna Space is all about. We're saying, look, we're going to mimic the sun's broad spectrum emission, but without the ultraviolet and blue, for the reasons stated, because we're just getting too much of it. It's still good to get sun, but we're going to focus on near infrared. And near infrared delivers these light therapy benefits that are healing through the mitochondrial responses. And that's every cell of the body. And then we're also recognizing, hey, almost every human culture has a sauna tradition. There's something to that. And now we see in the research, the modern research, yes, longevity, health span, reductions and dementia, and so many things. We need to be doing sauna. Sauna presents itself as not just the most effective way of detoxing heavy metals, petrochemicals, nanoparticles, just anything, microplastics. It also does so in a really safe, intelligent way where the body knows what to detox. So we could talk more about detox and stuff, but basically what we're saying is, hey, if you can't do enough heliotherapy, like let's recognize and do the next best thing, which is the full complement of the healing wavelengths of the sun. Most of them are very healing.
I love it. Have you heard of lipofuscin, Brian?
Lipofuscin.
Sometimes it's pronounced lipofuscin, or that's something I've been studying for a while. So back to like what you were talking about with the contextual things, and you mentioned seed oils. I'm a big fan of the basic vitamin E supplementation mixed tocopherol, and the reason is because it slows the accumulation of this age pigment. It's like a yellow brown pigment that accumulates, especially in the RPE cells of the eye. And it actually has a peak absorption rate at UVB wavelengths. And what it is it's damaged proteins and oxidized lipids, like from consuming canola oil and all of these seed oils, but actually mixed together into this kind of glycated mess with aluminum, maybe excess iron, maybe excess copper. And it makes this really inflammatory thing that you can actually see on the skin eventually. If someone gets a lot of skin exposure, whenever I fly on planes, I see old bald guys and I see the age spots all over their head. And
Yeah.
100% of the time, they're not always lipofuscin, but much of the time they are. And yeah, consuming all the airplane food and just standard American diet, like you mentioned, it's definitely one of the huge contextual things because UVB just accelerates that process and that directly contributes to eye degeneration, neurodegeneration, tons of problems. Again, not saying sunlight is bad, but you have to be aware that there's all these factors now. Even air pollution kind of synergizes with UV light in a bad way. And pollutants become more harmful when they get exposed to ultraviolet light, like in a city. So yeah, there are internal sunscreens you could do. I think astaxanthin's overrated, but vitamin C and vitamin E are huge ones. And obviously, melatonin, which you can make it and supplement it, which is what I do. I think that's the best of both worlds.
Mm-hmm.
But, so anyway,
Yeah.
just wanted to throw that out there because it's something that not a lot of people know about. And it's just, we're not in the same world we were in even a couple hundred years ago. Right.
Yeah, that's a big part of what we talk about in our argument is that our biology is in the ancient world and it hasn't evolved much even in the last 10, 20,000 years, but the modern environment presents some really unique new challenges to our health that's why I don't like the word biohacker. I prefer like bioharmonizing. That's why it behooves us to consider some of these modern technologies in the bioharmonization space that can help counteract some of these new challenges like nanoparticles, like petrochemicals. Those are only 100 years old or a little bit more than that. And the amount of heavy metals we're exposed to because we're mining the earth and we're creating all these products and our water is like really dirty. Everything that you can see it on Instagram. There's constantly people looking into that, like this brand and that brand, even the organic spice brands, some of them have issues with heavy metal load. And it shines light on this need to like cleanse and take care of ourselves even more than our ancestors did. And especially because we're not living like them, but our biology is crying out for those same things: sunlight, sweating, cleansing, like lymphatic activation of some kind. It's the body is very easy to take care of if you understand some of these things, but it is very challenging to take care of in the modern lifestyle where we're like at the computer all the time, we're indoors all the time, we're not growing our own food, these sorts of things. So,
well, you brought up sauna a few times, and I'm really curious your thoughts. So I've been living off grid 100% the last 3 years. And fortunately, I'm moving on grid, which I'm excited to not listen to a generator in the winter, this winter. But I've been using a wood burning barrel sauna, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's a Finnish style where it's basically the rocks. You can
yeah.
splash water on it, but it has basically a wood stove underneath the rocks. And I've been using that for the majority of the last 3 years. And prior to that, for I don't know how many, 10 years, I was using just the standard black carbon panel wooden boxes that a million companies sell that are electric, that use a pretty good amount of power. And it's kind of interesting trying different types of saunas and now having yours, which I got the super souped up one with I think 7 bulbs. That's the two panel thing stacked, which is kind of too much. I think the 4 is plenty, or even 3 is enough for me. But yeah, I'm just curious if your experience with the wood burning ones and the difference between the ones I just mentioned and just your general thoughts on all those.
Yeah, the biggest difference for me is the sauna session time. So with Sauna Space, we use near infrared light to radiantly heat the body, so you don't have to preheat the sauna, and you achieve the two outcomes you want to measure in a sauna session in probably 30 minutes with 4 bulbs and only like 15 minutes with the 7 bulbs. It does take time to definitely to acclimate to that, but for those who are really really healthy and want like the fastest sauna session on earth, that's a huge game changer. Because in contrast, if you use the air to heat the body, like a traditional barrel sauna, a far infrared sauna, they're heating the air up to heat the body. That's why they have to be preheated. The air is the primary like heat source. It's not radiant light that's heating you for the most part. So In those saunas, you have to preheat it an hour and you have to stay in an hour to achieve the measurable outcomes of a sauna session. For me, that's like the biggest game changer. What are the measurable outcomes? They're sweating out 1 pound of water and raising core temperature 3 degrees. There's a lot of confusion here in sauna, oh, what's the best sauna? Well, how hot does your sauna get? Well, it doesn't matter. All that matters is what is the physiological response produced in the body. The physiological response of sauna is essentially, is fundamentally the heat shock protein response. So you have to heat up the cells by several degrees for a period of minutes, or they have to hit 3 degrees raised for like a period of minutes to get this maximum heat shock protein response. And then we want to be sweating. So it's not just heating up the body. We want to heat it up enough to provoke a sweat. So the whole body needs to be heated up. And then we activate the skin to eliminate the toxins that the heat shock proteins are help move out of the cells. So additionally, and by the way, those two outcomes are, when I refer to those, I'm talking about the longevity research that's been done in Finland, 25, 30-year studies now on thousands of humans, tracking large population groups with proper controls. And we see basically that you sauna 1 day a week and it reduces your risk of all-cause mortality. And if you do it 3 times a week, the risk reduction's like doubled. So it's like ideal probably to use sauna 3 times a week if you have one at home and you can totally do it. I use mine 4 or 5 days a week, but I also I'm really careful with them, taking minerals and watching what I eat. That may be too intense for some people, but that's the outcome that's measured. So when you look at the sauna studies, it doesn't matter what the air temperature is. It doesn't matter if it's humid or dry. All that matters is you stay in there long enough to get that response. So you can do that in a barrel sauna or traditional sauna or a black carbon panel far infrared sauna, and you'll get the same benefit in terms of the heat. It just takes a lot longer. If you're using the sauna an hour and preheating an hour, 3 sauna sessions a week is a 6-hour time investment, which not everybody has the time for. With what I do, and when it being only 15 minutes, that's a dramatically smaller amount of time. That's so fast. It's like 45 minutes a week. It's, a 15-minute session is something most people can fit in at the beginning or end of the day. So that's the biggest, most important thing for me, but probably almost equally important is the experience itself. When you heat a sauna up to 180 degrees, like a traditional sauna, and it's really hot, and then you splash water on the hot rocks, or maybe you're doing a steam sauna, it's very intense. Many people find it to be claustrophobic, stifling. You get out and you're kind of woozy and lightheaded, and I don't like that personally. You asking me about my personal experience, I want to do something that's fun, that I enjoy when I'm in there. I get out, it's like high fives. I feel amazing. And I feel that's what we deliver with our approach using the near infrared light, is an experience and a therapy that's very rejuvenative. It's very joyful. You get out and you feel more zen, more centered, more whole. It can be fun. So I think that it matters. I don't like to do things that are just good for my health. When people tell me, oh, you should be doing this, you should be doing that, I have gravitated more over the years to only doing things that I actually enjoy. And sauna, I definitely want to enjoy that. So it's a big experiential difference. The experience is really important. And we've developed different technology and things into our design to add to that experience. But fundamentally, all saunas are good. It just take longer to heat you up if they're using the air. That's traditional saunas, far infrared saunas, steam baths, and so forth.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it's probably a very small percentage of the listeners that have kind of prepping off-grid background and context with this stuff, because obviously LEDs are way more energy efficient, but 15-minute session, even with that much wattage, even 100% off grid, that's not much power, that even if all 7 were rolling. But right. What I recommend for people, if the grid went down, which I think it will at some point for a time, have a wood burning option, right? Which you're going to have all the time in the world to sauna then, right? If we were in that scenario. But, obviously solar panels, inverters, and batteries, good to have. So I wanted to talk about the Sauna Space design, because at the beginning you mentioned your home build, and I did the same thing, I think you did it way before me. I did it when I was living in an RV, Home Depot, PVC pipes, canvas, painter's tent, and mounted some bulbs into a wood board and hung it up. And yeah, definitely didn't heat me as much as yours. And I think we'll talk about that. You did some things to the filament and kind of changed the bulbs a bit, but aesthetically, it looks amazing. Like I have the turmeric one, the turmeric dyed tent, and it just aesthetically looks amazing inside and out. And that for me is a big deal. But Brian Hoyer, he's local to me, and we've hung out, and he's the EMF, building biologist, EMF guy. We've had some fun conversations, and he said you actually consulted with him. Was it back in 2018 ish or something, 2017 on upgrading the bulbs? And
yeah, totally. There's a lot of aspects of our design that are really unique that have taken many, many years to develop. The bulb itself took about 4 years to develop. So it was a lot of testing and trying out stuff. Essentially, our bulb, the Firelight bulb, has a filament that's designed to run at a higher Kelvin, and it emits significantly more near infrared than a standard heat lamp, like what Dr. Kellogg was using. Standard heat lamps are still great and effective. Our bulb is just focusing particularly more on the therapeutic photobiomodulation wavelength and more on the water absorbed near infrared, so the radiant heating capability. So the bulbs deliver more heat and more light therapy, and they're handmade and they're super beautiful. They use stained glass and kind of the old way of making glass. It's also hard quartz glass, so that's a high frequency material. It's cool that the light goes through that. So that's kind of the heart of the technology, but there's a lot of other things that we've incorporated over the years. Some of the most exciting stuff was definitely during my sort of amazing relationship that I had with Brian Hoyer. So I met him and he made some comments about the product, and it irritated me at first. And I was like, well, wait a second, let me see if I can figure this out. And that started a long love affair. Basically, he moved to where we're based in Columbia, Missouri with his family for a couple of years. And I had no idea about EMFs until I met him in terms of like actual concepts and how to measure it and how to validate it. And I learned so much from him, and that got me on the journey to create a fully EMF shielded experience. And so first I worked on like EMF shielding the light panels themselves. Nowadays they have our third or fourth generation lamp guard that has a basket on it that's stainless steel, and that is a Faraday cage. So it blocks the electric fields from the device. And there's also electric magnetic shielding in the panel and the cord. So basically there's no undesirable electric or magnetic field from the product. So we're not bringing any of that to the experience. And that was the start of kind of a 3-stage process of solving everything. The second step was, okay, what about the wired electric fields in the home, in the environment? Not to mention the wireless. Like, what do we do about what's already there? So we developed our grounding mat. And now it's really slick. It has our custom-made organic EMF shielding material built into it. It's a bamboo grounding mat, so it looks cool and it's beautiful. But hidden inside is this grounding material that has a design that grounds to the light panel. So it's grounded. And that serves two purposes. One, to protect us from the wired electric fields from the electricity in the home. And two, it also added in grounding therapy, which I also didn't even think about in the beginning. Grounding therapy is really well researched. For those of you out there who are not familiar with it, you can search it online. It essentially, when you walk barefoot on the earth, it infuses your body with all these millions and millions of electrons, and they reset your cell membrane potentials and recalibrate your meridians, and qualitatively that results in improved mood, improved sleep, calming the nervous system. And there's actually there continues to be interesting research into the actual treatment of disease for using grounding. So we incorporated that into the sauna kind of along the way, and that was really cool. And then the final thing was what we call our silver lining. And it started out with a material that we sourced from somebody else, but we didn't like it, and we wanted something certified organic. So we spent, and that was like another 2 years, like trying and testing, and then getting it third party tested for 5G, which when that came out was a new concept in 2000. This was 2018. You couldn't even really find meters to measure 5G, but we knew, those of us like in the know, in the industry, I should say, knew that this was coming. It was just, the natural progression of cellular technology. And so we had ours tested, and we developed what is now, like a couple generations later, a fabric that's 35% silver, 65% organic cotton. It's machine washable. It's really cool. And it blocks out it's also grounded to the light panels, ground to the grounding mat. So it blocks out almost all of the wireless EMF. So the user sits inside the Sauna Space sauna with the silver lining in basically a totally EMF free environment that is the way it is in nature, the way our ancestors grew. Like, you're grounding on the bare earth. You have no non-native man-made EMF on the body, and you're getting the healing light of the sun, basically, without ultraviolet and blue light. And those were some of the biggest steps and are designed to enhance the experience and add additional stacks to this time that we're in the sauna. And the rest of it, is just a product of like listening to, well, what do people want? People, not everybody's like yourself, having like lots of land and lots of room. The average person wants something that's very plug and play and portable and easy to set up, and kind of they can take with them if they need to move. And also they want something that's organic. So we don't want to deal with any more chemicals than we already have exposure to. We want things to be untreated, all natural, organic, and so forth. And so we designed our product with those principles in mind. It's got a curtain to open and close it. The wood's all like solid basswood, which is a hypoallergenic wood. And everything's handmade too, because ultimately all matter absorbs frequencies. And when you make food with love and you sit down with friends and family and you have that shepherd's pie or whatever, you can there's a frequency coming out of it because of the intentionality imbued into it in the creation of it. And we take that same philosophy here at Sauna Space. Like, we secretly laser engrave the core values of our company inside the light panels, and also everything's handmade. When you have things that are machine made, they're just they miss this creative step and this creative process and the frequency input into the product, the literally the love energy that goes into it. So we've always kept it handmade. It continues to be handmade here. Actually, where I'm speaking to you from is our factory in Missouri, and the rest of it is like, well, I never had any business training, but I've had a lot of experience with consumer products, buying them, and I want to be, I guess maybe I'm a little demanding. I want to be treated like a human, and so we've always had a big focus on like making sure our customers succeed, that they're supported by us. We have in-house customer support. You can call and ask us about things. We even have a licensed physician partner that we can recommend to you and get a free 20-minute consultation if you need particularized medical advice on like, should I use sauna? I don't know. And we continue to like create this experience that's really full spectrum, no pun intended, where you get in there and you have light therapy, sauna therapy, heat therapy, grounding therapy. It's a perfect place to do meditation and breath work, or just listen to healing frequencies and kind of return to yourself. We have this unlimited healing ability in all of us. I'm not special in this sense, and neither are you. Like, we're all equally gifted with this power. We've just maybe forgotten it, and we've given our power away to other people, and we're letting other people make health decisions for us. But any moment we can choose to like take that power back and start taking care of ourselves. And a huge part of it is cleansing ourselves of everything that doesn't belong.
That's amazing. Very cool. With the grounding mat, is that included in all of them, or just the?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, that's standard.
Maybe I didn't watch the whole, I'm kind of the guy that just puts it together without watching the instructional video, but I saw the grounding thing. I got to figure out where it goes in my mat.
Yeah, there's a little cable that connects from where the cord connects to the light panel, and it just goes down and goes into a jack in the front of the mat, right under the panel. So it's super easy to connect. And yeah, you want that connected. You don't need it, but if you have that, you get the grounding therapy and you get the protection from the wired electricity. Most homes don't have shielded wiring. If you had all shielded wiring, it wouldn't be as big of a deal. But most residential homes in America are using, it's called Romex. So it's just coated in plastic, and the electric fields are substantial. Not to mention, anytime you plug in a power cord for an appliance or a device, unless you're at Brian Hoyer's house, it's not shielded. So
I've seen his set. Yeah, I was there when he was building his house and making the floor grounded, and he was doing a lot of crazy stuff. It's pretty cool.
yeah,
Making certain rooms, like the living room, half shielded so you can still get reception, but making the bedrooms total Faraday cages. And yeah, it's interesting. It's yeah, there's so many details, right? Like you said, with how homes are built and what wiring they used. And I actually sell grounding sheets just because I got into it in 2010. I was living with my parents, and so I've been grounding while I sleep since 2010. And so I'm like, I might as well sell just basic sheets. But
oh,
I always
amazing.
recommend people do rod to earth when they can, because I know all the potential complications with going into the third prong and the outlet, with electric fields. And I guess that's the big one. They say the silver threads, basically making an antenna for the electric fields coming out of the walls. So,
Yeah, and also what you're referring to is the ground is not clean in a lot of houses. A lot of that's due to the unshielded wiring, and you get leaky electric fields to get onto the ground, and there's actually voltage on the ground line. But it's also the inherent design of American like electrical supply, the all of the neutral wires. That's the wire that the electricity passes through after it goes through your device, like your computer that you're using. It goes back to the power panel in your home, and it connects directly to the ground plate. In Europe, the neutral wires go all the way back to the power plant. So that keeps the grounds a lot cleaner. And then the other thing is, because the neutrals go into the ground plates, and also because of the wireless technology that's saturating all the cities, like there's actual voltage now in the ground in the cities everywhere, and the ground picks that up. So you can actually get these like conditioner things that remove dirty electricity and fix like the waveforms of electricity in your home. It's like this add-on you put to your panel. It's really cool because it's not just for the health benefit, like if you're grounding sheets and stuff, it also makes your appliances work a lot better. The power utilization is a lot improved. So they typically put that in like factories and laboratories where you're manufacturing things and things are sensitive. But ideally, we would all have those in our home. Definitely.
yep. Yeah, absolutely. Have you heard the theory that EMFs decrease our ability to absorb light, like artificial EMFs? Because the sun's EMF, right? But I mean, our man-made artificial EMFs actually like block, not 100%, but just like partially the body's ability to absorb light. Because that's when I saw your product initially with the silver lining, that's what I thought your angle was. But a lot of people probably live in apartments and kind of factory farm human living.
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, essentially, EMFs cause oxidative stress in the body. They open our calcium channels and cause too much oxidative stress in the cell, and the cells die, or the cells are struggling to compete with that. And without getting too much into the weeds, the production of peroxynitrite and there's damage to the DNA, there's damage to the tissues. I would say yes, because the body's ability to absorb light is based on light receptors. These are special proteins and enzymes in the body that literally absorb light. They're absorbing photons from the light source, and they're converting it into electrons. It's really quite magical, actually. The primary one is the cytochrome in the mitochondria. It absorbs red and near infrared light, and it's a protein structure that can be compromised over time. That's what actually is really cool about sauna, as an aside, is sauna doesn't just cleanse the cells. The heat shock proteins also refold proteins. They improve protein function. So they'll actually take proteins that are inside of the cell and hanging off the outside of the cell, and they'll make them work right again. Proteins are really complicated structures that need to fit lock and key. with whatever they're doing, whoever, what other protein they're talking to. And for many of us, 20 or 30% of the proteins in the body, as soon as they're made in the cells, are already misfolded, whether it's because of epigenetic degeneration or just maybe naturally occurring. So these enzymes on the mitochondria are also proteins. They also like have these complicated structures. So that's a part of what's really interesting also about light therapy is the sauna's in there, the heat's in there, sort of fixing protein function. And the light therapy also uniquely has this epigenetic repair effect that we more commonly call anti-aging. And the two together really are this like really amazing combination to help repair the body. But back to the light receptors, yeah, definitely if you have dysfunction or misfolding in your light receptor enzymes, you're not going to absorb light as well in so many ways. So I would say that's a valid argument.
Kind of a side question here. Have you experimented with the opposite, like darkness therapy? Like for years, I've been playing around with sensory deprivation flotation therapy. And I've noticed actually in there it could get quite bright. Like in the beginning, you were saying we're beings of light. And I think years ago, I heard, the reason why we see full color and sometimes our dreams are more vivid than real life or just as vivid is because our pineal gland's actually emitting photons, and that's how we can see while we're dreaming. And I've experienced actually the same thing in the float tank. So just curious if you played with that. And
Yeah, I actually am a huge fan of salt float tanks. Really love them. I love them when they're like, yeah, completely dark. You go inside and you float, on the salt water, and you get really quiet. It's a very interesting therapy. What you mentioned about us being beings of light, it's important to understand it's not just visible light. It's probably more accurate to say we're beings of frequency. So we emit, we absorb, and we emit like most of the frequencies, that are in our environment. It's not just a few. We have this concept called cosmic rays, cosmic radiation. These are like electrons and positrons and alpha particles, things that are like flying through the universe. And there's different theories on how they're made, but they go right through the atmosphere and they go right through our bodies. And I'm actually reading this book by George Lakovsky, this Russian researcher who is based in France. He wrote this book in 1934 called, what is it called? The Creation of Life or The Being of Life or something. But it's this, he talks about this idea that the cosmic rays are constantly like correcting and reinvigorating our body's ability to produce radiation and are recalibrating the frequencies that all of our cells vibrate at. And so back to what I'm saying, we absolutely transmit and receive way more than the visible spectrum. We're talking now about near infrared light, which is invisible. That's more and more well understood. But you mentioned our pineal gland. The pineal gland is a frequency receptor. It's a light receptor. In some animals, it actually is an actual like visible light receptor. In humans, the pineal gland is right between the eyes. In Ayurvedic, in the Ayurvedic culture, it's called the third eye, and it's shaped like an antenna. It's like totally shaped like an antenna. And so when you do various different modalities of breath work, and you pull the energy from your lower chakras into your brain physiologically, you're squeezing the cerebrospinal fluid, bringing it up, bathing it in the pineal gland. You're activating the pineal gland as an antenna. So what is it producing and what is it receiving? Well, it's these frequencies from the universe, from our reality around us, from source, from each other. That's why we, some people call it the sixth sense, or like when you feel someone walking into the room, you don't hear them, but like, or you can feel, especially when you feel someone staring at you. That's one example of like, we have way more senses than just the five. So what are we sensitive to? What are we sensing? It's all about the light and the frequency. And I do absolutely love the float tanks as a contrast to having this powerful light and heat therapy. It's when you remove all the stimulus, instead of giving the body a ton of stimulus, when you remove all of it, it's helpful to it's helpful in helping you remember the frequencies you have within you and reconnecting with yourself. And so I think it's a beautiful contrast. I in fact enjoy that way more than cold therapy. I don't really like cold therapy so much. I'll do it here and there, because it's fun sometimes, I guess. But on if I had a access to a float chamber like near me, wow, I would be going in there all the time. It's really amazing experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I interviewed a guy that's been selling hot tubs for like 50 plus years, maybe longer. And he sells float tanks as well. So in a month, I'm going to have my own in the basement again. It's been years and I love it.
Oh
I think
wow.
it's a great investment and amazing. And you get magnesium and you get sulfur. So if you choose that form, is that the same Lukovsky that you mentioned that made the multi-wave oscillator? Are you familiar with
That's
that?
right. Yeah.
Okay,
That's
cool.
the culmination of all of his work is he was like all this there's trillions of cells, quadrillions of cells in the body or whatever and everyone's at a different frequency. So how do we reproduce in a safe way this effect that the cosmic radiation is producing and correcting the frequency of our cells? His theory was the health when we're healthy is when the cellular radiation that all of our cells emit is ascendant upon the radiation produced by the microbes in our body. And when the microbes gain the upper hand and have stronger radiation producing capabilities than our own cells, we develop disease. And when our cells stop emitting radiation, that's when they're dead, and we die. And so he's like, he did a ton of research. It started out on research on plants that have cancer. But what's really interesting is it's eerily prescient, the book, because written in 1937, right? Before World War II. And in the introduction of the book, the guy who introduces him is talking about the societal problem of cancer and the cancer rates in humans exploding. So this was in England. The introduction was written by an English guy, and how all of the allopathic medicine at that time was like this was like a woeful failure, and yet there's like all of this establishment ego in continuing to do things that don't work and trying to treat cancer instead of prevent it. And Lukovsky was, a very independent thinker, and he had he produced results that were documented that were incredible that you can read about in the book and in treatment of disease. But he basically his technology was this multi-wave oscillator. He developed this device that instead of creating all the quadrillions of frequencies that each different cell would need in order to like enhance cell function, he created this machine that allowed the cells to oscillate, to resonate with it, but oscillate at the frequency they needed to. It's this multi-wave, like this catch-all oscillator, and you can buy those online. You can see how it's built. It's
I
in
see
his
them on
book.
eBay. It's like a
Yeah, yeah,
chair with two like wheels. It's two big circles, right? One on each side of you, basically, is
yeah,
the ones I've seen.
yeah. And there's other ones that are like smaller, but yeah, the concept is really fascinating. A friend recommended it to me, so I think I'm gonna try one actually once I'm done with the book.
That's cool. Yeah, the last like 4 years I've been really into scalar energy, and I had Paul Harris on the show that invented the Therify, which is noble gases with high voltage running through them, like a blend of noble gases. And yeah, I do like 12 minutes a day on my massage table. It's like a human charger. The phone doesn't work well around it, so I'll put it away, play a podcast, and lay there and just kind of you just bathe in plasma basically. And yeah, I always like all the different energy scalar plasma products out there. I'll try them all. And
Well, it's just really fascinating. It's like what we're doing too. It's all energy therapy. It's all frequency therapy, quantum therapy. The more we look at like the fundamental structure of the cells, all these nutrients and vitamins and supplements and things, they're all being distilled down to this fundamental language of the universe and our cells that's electromagnetic. It's like the language when I'm speaking to you now, you're hearing these words, but it's going into your brain and it's being broken down into electrical signals, basically. So same thing in the cells. So it seems like some of the most exciting things that are going on are things in like the quantum science and energy work. And And it's interesting that we're a part of that, even though our technology has been, really the inspiration for it is from the 1890s, but it still turns out to be like this powerful thing. Yeah, we're beings of light, and sometimes the most challenging things to address in our health are emotional and energetic and electromagnetic. So EMFs become an important concern that it sounds like you've done a lot of work to bring awareness to that and address that. And also like emotionally and spiritually, that's all energy. Do I love myself? Am I holding on to trauma? Do I have blocks? Do I have illusions that I'm holding on to? All of these things manifest physically in our tissues and our fascia. There's like neuropeptides in our tissues. And so even sauna is not enough. You got to like do some kind of fascia therapy or vibration therapy to like knock that stuff loose so that you can cleanse it out. But all of it just is really, it's like what Dr. King Klinghardt talks about, the pyramid of health. The physiological is at the base, it's the foundation. But there's higher order systems, the emotional, the energetic, and the electromagnetic that are much higher order. And so often people resolve issues on an energetic, spiritual level, and their physical pain goes away.
Absolutely. Yeah. You mentioned Wilson. I want to get to that in a second. But first, have you heard the theory that when we're sick, we basically leak light or emit more light? I used to play around with the Konstantin Korotkov GDV camera, the gas discharge visualization camera, where you put
Wow.
in
Cool.
all your figures and it basically sends a little, you can't sense it, but a little bit of electricity, and your fingertips emit a burst of light. And that's what it picks up with this camera. And it's ELF UV light, so extreme low frequency UV light that it captures. And then it maps it to a software, and you could basically see your biofield. They don't call it the aura, it's like a biofield, but it's interesting because when I wasn't feeling well, it was bigger, which it's counterintuitive because you would think, oh, the bigger the field, that means you're very energized, but it's actually the opposite. If your light's pushing way out
Mhm.
far, usually you're fighting an infection or you're stressed or dealing with emotional and spiritual, baggage or blocks.
Yeah. And what I would add to that is it's not just the size of your biofield, it's also the quality of it and the density of it. So, there's like a certain perimeter, and you can measure this, like you said, you can measure it. There's a special Japanese camera, I think, that you can actually see the auric field of a person. People are emitting light. And definitely when you're diseased, you have less coherence to the light. It's not like this beautiful bubble around you. It looks more chaotic. But it's not just the size of it, it's also the density of it. How full is it of light and of energy? What is the density? So the quality and the density are also important parameters in the auric field, but it's whether you want to call it auric field or biofield, it's real. And we're all emitting light. The DNA in our body emits light. The mitochondria communicates with the nucleus with near infrared wavelengths of light. It's all going on all the time within us, and really fascinating, but also really powerful. Really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Why I brought that up is I don't know. I think a lot of people are light deficient. And especially, I mean, up here in North Idaho, there's not much sunlight for, I don't know, a third of the year or something. And that's what's really powerful with sauna space and just light therapy in general is I do look at it as food. And I think most modern humans are deficient just in light in general.
Yeah, totally. And it's interesting that the allopathic recommendation is a flickering blue bulb, what they call a SADS lamp. And then they have their opinions on that, but I also have my own. I think that nowadays, due to the modern indoor environment being all that, we're getting way too much blue light. And when you put this blue flickering light in front of you, this LED light that's all blue and it's a really high lux, you're stimulating a sympathetic response. And that can feel good. Like like many things are when you initially when you have that fight or flight response, but then afterwards, you have the drop, and really what everybody needs, or maybe what most people need, is more parasympathetic inducing stimuli, things that put us back into rest and digest so we can heal. And that's what's cool about what we do. It's not just the light therapy, it's also the sauna. When you do the therapy, it is slightly sympathetic. You have increased heart rate. There are some things that are sympathetic inducing, but as soon as you get out of the sauna, you have this huge, powerful swing of your nervous system into a parasympathetic state. Your HRV score has a huge boost to it. You get better sleep. You're way more relaxed. You're way more zen, and you feel better. So I feel like what we're doing, even though I make no medical claims, is much more correctly called a happy light than these weird blue things that are being pushed onto people. But it again, it has to do with our modern environment. We're not getting enough red, near infrared, particularly. We're getting way too much blue. So we have so many customers in the northern latitudes who love our product in the winter. And also indoors, that's a cool thing about our product is the Firelight spectrum that it emits actually cancels out the amount of measurable blue light and flickering light. So it's not just like bringing in this healing spectrum, it's actually canceling out the toxic spectrum. So regardless of where you live, after dark, this is an amazing light to have if you're indoors, if you have to look at a screen for technology fatigue, or to just have as a replacement for all this overhead LED lighting. But when you have the two together, the Firelight spectrum comes in and you can measure it. There's little to no blue light and flickering light that's measurable if you have it close to you. So it has this effect of bringing the outdoor spectrum indoors and re-optimizing the indoor light environment. And especially for those who live in northern climes in Canada and places like that in the winter, it's such a lifesaver. It makes you feel so good.
Yeah, I like that single bulb that you guys sell. I actually used it uh, several years ago next to the shower, which was nice in the winter before and after a shower, just to have some warmth. But that's another application you just said that's really cool. So that single bulb would not be for sweating; it would be for the photobiomodulation, correct?
Correct, for the most part. So the single bulb, that's called our glow. So it's one of our Firelight bulbs on a EMF shielded fixture that's kind of got a cool stand that it sits in. And it's primarily used for spot therapy, so relief of symptoms anywhere on the body. It's not enough power to provoke that temperature increase in the body to get like a strong sweat response. It's instead used for the spot therapy and for the technology fatigue and screen fatigue and for clean light after dark. And also some other interesting things, like you mentioned the bathroom, like in the morning, you could use it for morning reset. The human body is supposed to experience near infrared light in the morning before blue light, and it calibrates our hormones and our body to have an amazing, successful day. If we grab our phone instead, or we go to the bathroom right when we wake up, flick on the bathroom LEDs, we get blue light, which stresses us out and puts us in a stress state basically all day in terms of all kinds of physiology in the body. So you can mimic the sunrise and the sunset with the glow. It's really cool. It's kind of like what they call in Indian culture Agnihotra. It's like where you have blessed ghee and you cast it on the sacred fire, and then the healing, and then the sun's light hits the ghee and the fire and casts healing frequencies onto you. And this, in combination with sun gazing and watching the sunrise, are examples of ancient wisdom that we've validated nowadays with light therapy research. So it's not just to get some light therapy as a replacement. It actually, if you use it at certain times, like in the morning, right when you wake up, like when I travel, I make sure that I turn the glow on just for like a minute is all it takes to get that programming before I turn on any lights in the hotel room or whatever. And so those are all really powerful uses. You can also use it as an adjunct to any therapy you do, like meditation or breath work or yoga. It brings in this really cool vibe, this really cool light. It feels like the sun. It feels like the bonfire. When people sit around the fire, They're more grounded. They're more in their bodies. They're more open, and there's a beautiful thing that happens there with the spectrum of the firelight, and you can kind of bring that. And it's even surprising to people, like, wow, what is that? It's kind of strange. And then after a while, they're like, wow, this feels really good. And if you work at a computer, once you work with a glow next to you, it's really noticeable and maybe frustrating to work without it, with all the blue light all the time. It's, for me, it's a lot more stressful. So I try to always have that with me, to, because this is very unnatural. I mean, all this blue light like 2 feet from your face for hours and hours and hours. Like it's a big part of why people don't sleep well, why male testosterone is low, and so many other problems, like this blue light problem that we have.
I'll have to experiment with that. My family and friends are mostly in San Diego, California, and I was just down there for my birthday, and I usually bring my blue blockers, and I forgot them. And my parents have really harsh, like in ceiling lights, like I guess they're can lights or whatever, with high flicker and really bright. And I definitely felt it. And so I'm gonna bring it with me the next time and just have that on at the table to see if I feel a difference. And yeah, that's a
Yeah.
pretty cool, it's a cool strategy. What do you use for lighting in your house? Because I have the color changing bulbs throughout, where three settings and can turn them amber.
So I have some warm in the kitchen, and like the closets, I have a warm LED that's the center light, where you can change the temperature of it to make it really low, so it's not bright blue. And in the living room, I have incandescent, like central ceiling light, and I have a hearth in the living room, so that's our sauna panel that's sitting on our pedestal, and so that's in the living room. And then in the bedroom, I have a glow light on each side of the bed at the bedside. So the bedroom, I almost never turn on the light ever at all, the overhead light that's in there. And in the living room, I pretty much always have my hearth on, either two or three or four bulbs. And blue light's not bad during the day. It's not so bad. It's a little weird to get it from the screen. We're definitely getting more dose if we're a computer worker all day, but blue light is important to get during the day. It helps build melatonin in the pineal gland. It's a part of keeping our circadian rhythm, our sleep cycle, like correct, our clock, our biological clock correct. It's after dark that it becomes really toxic. So when I'm at home, I turn on my hearth in the living room after dark. There's no overhead lighting at all. Maybe a little bit temporarily in the kitchen, but I also have a dimmer on those. So wherever I'm using LED light, it's really warm, and I turn it down the intensity as much as possible. But definitely in the bedroom, only the firelight. In the living room, like those are the two places you're basically hanging out after dark. So yeah, and so when most of the rest is incandescent bulbs, like little table lamps and things like that. They I don't have red bulbs. I just usually have either clear. I usually have clear bulbs, but I have the hearth and the glows that like totally bring in all of that healing spectrum. If you don't have that, if you don't have any of these, the red bulbs are a great improvement on like the regular LEDs that are out there.
That's a cool strategy. Yeah, I can't remember who I heard it from, but intuitively, it's unnatural to have overhead light at night, right? Because we would be with a fire. Is that where you're
Fire
coming
down
from?
low.
With
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So it'd be red in the infrared wavelengths that are low and no overhead light after dark, for sure.
I'll have to experiment with that. Yeah, there's always some. It might be easier since I'm moving into a bunker next year, so I can build things into it where yeah, less overhead lighting. And you guys sell a sauna or a shower conversion kit, which is pretty cool. So if someone has one of those like glass door showers, that's kind of perfect, right, for putting your product in.
Yeah, that's basically for people who don't have room for the sauna and they have an extra bathroom, like a full bath. And so it's this little kit that's the hearth on a pedestal and a stool and this big shower curtain we make out of organic canvas, and then two shower rods that it's supplied with too. And you kind of box in a little shower stall. It doesn't have to have glass doors. If it does, it's fine. It's basically for people who just can't quite work the sauna into their setup for size space or budget reasons. It's something that I was like pressured, honestly, in the beginning to make, and I was like, I don't like it that much initially because of it doesn't have a grounding mat, and aesthetically, it's a little bit limited, the whole experience. But once we started producing it, there's a certain sector that we're satisfying a need where that's just the setup that they want and that they can only do, and people love it. It's really cool for what it's worth. Like it's bringing the solution of sauna in the home to so many people. So it's kind of a side of products. Not as many people get it. Most people get our Firelight sauna. It's like the full turnkey package.
So you said the four bulb setup roughly 30-ish minutes to sweat, and then the seven it's 15. Is that right?
Yeah, in our enclosure, so our Firelight sauna, the four bulbs takes you about 25 to 30 minutes to get that strong sweat response. And the seven bulb, yeah, it's only 16 minutes. It's so fast. There's a little variance there. If someone's new to sweating, depending on body size, hydration levels, it could take up to 40 minutes. Some people may be done in 20 minutes. But in the seven bulb, it's intense. You're not going to be in there more than 20 minutes. And it's very fast. Right now I do between 16 and 18 minutes. And like you mentioned in the beginning, like it's important not to overdo these things. It's just like the sun, it's just like anything else. It's called hormetic stress therapy. So there's a maximum benefit we get after a certain period of time. We want to promote maximum detox in the body, but not more than the body can withstand. So with all of our products and sauna therapy in general, you start slowly and you work your way into it. Someone who is new to sauna would definitely not want to use seven bulbs. It's too intense. They'll be fine with four bulbs for quite some period of time. I've been using sauna, multiple times a week for like over a decade. So even then in the beginning, yeah, using the super sauna I was using shorter sessions, but now I just have used it so much. It's still, after all this time, the 16 minutes or so is about as much time as I need. And you can tell, you can weigh yourself in the beginning and after to see how much sweat you lose. You can measure your body temperature with an instant read thermometer if you want to be left brain about it. But eventually you just go by feeling. Some days you don't need as much as others. Some days I maybe only stand for 12 minutes and it's not like a exact prescription of use. The protocol can change. The most important thing is to get back in touch with your intuition and remember that you actually have all the power and all the awareness to make these decisions on your own. And you go by feeling. You don't want to overdo it. If you overdo it, you can have excessive healing reactions, which are symptoms related to a toxin that you're detoxing, and those can be quite strange. Sometimes it can be very emotional. Sometimes some people start crying. Some people get rashes. Some people have psychedelic episodes. They're detoxing so many things. People can get flu-like symptoms when they're detoxing pharmaceutical drugs and all different kinds of metal and chemical smells, in the sweat. So just to be gentle with all that, we just don't want to overdo it. But even so, it's faster than any other sauna out there, definitely, even with the four bulbs. And that's what most people go with. But if you need it to be faster and you're well acclimated and you don't have like underlying health issues and you're generally healthy, then the seven bulb is definitely where it's at.
And then what does it look like? Like towel on the stool? Like that's what I've been doing, and then a small hand towel just to wipe my face and neck and just pat the
Yeah,
sweat
well,
off.
we
And then
in a month we're actually have finally our own custom made towel
oh,
that
cool,
fits the floor. It's a trapezoid. It's 3 layers and it
cool.
has these coconut buttons on it. It's pretty cool. And then there's a stool towel that's 5 layers in a kind of a flower petal shape that fold together and stick over the top of the stool like a bed sheet. Uh, you want to use a towel on the stool and a towel on the floor, and then kind of take those out when you're done. So the towels collect the sweat, and then you remove the towels after use. So usually, I have my floor towel, I have the stool towel. I sit in front, facing the bulbs, turn it on, close the curtain. Maybe I'll use a couple of blue eyes, like methylene blue eye drops. Maybe take some methylene blue before.
Jean
but I,
Laurent's
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It's its own thing, but it's a great stack. You know, it's a photodynamic compound, so it's really great for a lot of things. Anyway, I get in there and I face the bulbs for 2 to 4 minutes, and then I rotate a quarter turn, and then I continue that protocol, doing like one revolution in about 16 minutes. If you're doing the four bulb sauna, maybe you do two revolutions throughout the 30 minutes. And this maximizes the amount of light therapy I get on my body. It also allows me to get the maximum amount of heat that my body can withstand. And then when I rotate, I let that side rest and the blood shunts to the new side that's exposed to the heat and the light. And I get the fastest sweat response possible in a way that, I'm never overheating any part of the body. So after 16 minutes, very profuse sweat response. And I open the curtain and I step out and I grab the stool towel as I step out, and I actually leave the sauna on. And then I kind of brush off, I wipe the sweat off with that stool towel and then go take a shower, exfoliate in the shower with the exfoliating brush, do the shower thing. And then when I come back with the new towel that we have, it's a triple layer towel. So it's got a lot of layers in it. So it fully protects the mat below really effectively. So usually I just take that towel and put it on the stool and leave the lights on for like 5 minutes or so and make sure it's completely dry. And then I go on about my day. Even if you have one layer of a thick, fluffy towel on the floor, that's usually good enough. But you want to make sure it's dry. And if it's dirty, then you just remove it and wash it. So the grounding mat will last basically forever as long as you take care of it. If you didn't put a towel on the grounding mat and you just sweat all over it all the time, you would definitely eventually destroy it. The sauna set, the sweat of a sauna is usually really toxic. It's lots of chemicals. So that's just part of the product care. But that's kind of the experience. In my sauna is the super sauna, so it has 7 bulbs, and each row of lights has a switch. So if you have heat sensitivity and you need something really gentle, you can start out with 1 or 2 bulbs and work your way up. You can also leave the curtain open and work up your duration to this. Initially, there's many people who can't withstand a 3-degree temperature increase. They just need like a 1 or 2-degree increase. People with autoimmune issues and thyroid issues, they tend to be like more heat sensitive. As we've seen though with our customers, you can read those stories on our product pages in the reviews. The body slowly shifts its homeostasis, it detoxes, and it becomes more responsive to the sweat therapy. You sweat more. And then slowly over time, as you get really healthy, you actually heat temper your body. So sauna increases your resilience to heat stress. And so over time, yeah, you can basically take more heat and you can use more bulbs and even use the super sauna if you want.
Awesome. And is it roughly 18 inches away from the bulb? Is that the distance, or?
It's in our sauna, it's about 2 feet,
Okay.
more or less, from the torso to the bulbs. The legs are bent, so the legs and knees are closer, but the torso, which is what we're focusing the light on primarily, is about 2 feet away. Therapeutic distance with the hearth panels is between 18 inches and like 36 inches. With the glow light, it's a little, people use even farther away. The therapeutic distance is still like, 12 to 36 inches, maybe 40 inches. But the blue light cancellation effect occurs even farther away. So with the glow light, you can have it next to you and it doesn't even have to point at you. It's just kind of close to you, and it's cleansing and optimizing all the light around you. So if it's not pointed at you, it's not directly heating you up, and you can leave it on pretty much all day as long as you're at the computer, as long as you're in the room. If you leave the room, turn it off. But it can be used, yeah, for a really, really long time. But in the sauna, it's about 2 feet.
And that's for safety reasons, turn it off. Is that what you say that? Or?
Yeah, I have to say that. Sometimes I've definitely fallen asleep and having them next to me, when it's laying on its back. You have to turn it off, is what I'm saying, when you're not observing its use. But I've also tested it on myself, like everything. I've actually fallen asleep with it shining directly on my face. a couple of times. I woke up and yeah, I kind of a headache because it was like hours, on my head. But still, yeah, it's a all this is to say that it's very safe. You can't overdo it, but it's not like the LED light therapy where you can overdo it really quickly. And it's something where you notice it. And all in all, you can take a lot of this light. Like with the glow light, you can use it 10 minutes per hour on the head or the neck and half an hour per hour on any other part of the body. But you can also repeat that like 10 times a day. So you can dose yourself quite a bit if you're dealing with a significant issue in a limb, some edema or something like that is local. You could use it pretty much all day with breaks and just keep stimulating, and then rest or go to sleep, and then the next day you can continue to do that. Light therapy has been shown to be extremely effective for wound healing and like tissue regeneration. So yeah, it's really wonderful for all these uses.
What's the lifespan on these bulbs? Is it like hundreds or thousands of hours or
Bulbs are rated for 5,000 hours. So
pretty
that's
good?
a long time. Some do fail. We do guarantee our bulbs and our products for like 2 years. And usually and we QC them like multiple steps. Honestly, it's quite complex how we QC it. We QC it by spraying. We turn the bulbs on when they're manufactured and spray them with water to get them to any ones that have glass irregularities to fail. And then at our assembly facility here, we test all of them all over again, not just for intensity, but also color and also glass regularity and everything. And usually that catches almost everything. Once in a while they fail and we send out replacements. But we have customers who are using their original Firelight bulbs, used to be called the Thermalite bulb, just a new branding there. And that came out, I think, in 2018. So it's like 6 years, still using the same bulbs.
It's pretty good. Yeah, it's interesting that I think, and I know this being, owning a supplement company is people, and I have super reasonable prices, but people get very weird about money and stuff. And over the years, I've seen, I'm sure you've heard it. It's like, oh, just buy a chicken bulb. And I think in the beginning of this conversation, you said that that's still beneficial. And I think, oh yeah, I forgot to bring up Dr. Wilson. He has a great article on it, but your bulb's definitely different. I mean, I know Brian, you wouldn't lie to me. Hung out with him locally, and he told me the design of your bulb, there was definitely engineering that went into it. So yours is not identical to Tractor Supply. But I like that even though you sell these, you still said those still have benefits, just maybe not as much, right? With the different filament.
Yeah, it's just going to take you a little longer to heat. It's still faster than a traditional sauna and a little less light therapy, but still quite beneficial. It's all the other considerations of our design and our experience that the totality of the experience is a lot greater than that because of all the things that we've added in. The shielding is really important. The electric field from a incandescent bulb, particularly these high wattage 250 watt bulbs, it goes out like 4 feet. So you have that kind of toxic sidecar if you're not EMF shielding it. It also, they can break and the glass can shatter. And so having the guard is very important for safety. So you can never touch the operating bulb. And if it breaks, it keeps all the glass inside and it's easy to replace and no big deal. Yeah.
They're
And all
probably
the
not
other
doing
things.
they're probably
Go
not
ahead.
doing the QC on those bulbs for chickens, right? To the same rigors that you're doing.
No, they're all made in the least expensive way possible. Ours are not the least expensive way possible. Ours have a lot of it's a lot of QC testing and also the quartz glass and the stained glass approach. It's a more expensive way. Most of the regular heat lamps are dyed. They're like coated. The glass itself is not colored. It's not stained glass. It's has like a coating that's sprayed on the inside or even the outside of the bulb. So it's just like cheaper, it's like cheap ways of doing it. Our bulbs are made in the way bulbs used to be made, probably 50 years ago. And it is expensive to make and the QC process and all that, but we're not, I don't, I'm not in the business of supplying light bulbs. I'm where Sauna Space delivers this experience of activation of your body's own healing inside. And it's the totality of those things, and the grounding and the shielding and the convenience of the design, all of it, helps empower you to like get this done on a daily basis. You can certainly make your own if you want. And I celebrate the do-it-yourselfers out there. I am one of them. That's how I started. There's just a reality that most people don't have the time to even think about it, much less invest the resources in making something. And those people need a solution. And so it's once you start to look at the body as an investment and self-care as the best investment you can make, and in general natural wellness practices being a lot greater value, a lot higher benefit and lower risk than most of the other stuff out there. I would argue all of the allopathic stuff in terms of disease treatment anyway. And so we're serving this need that people are looking for, to have a turnkey clean product that's handmade, that's organic and very effective, most important, and with a lot of guarantees. So our products come with a 100-day free trial. They're basically built to last for life. They're warranted for like 5 or 10 years, depending on the type of part. And we also satisfy a do-it-yourself need for people who buy our hearth panels. They already have a barrel sauna or a cabinet sauna. They can buy just their sauna panel, upgrade their light heat technology to Sauna Space style, and not deal with any of the EMFs, that they have existing in their existing setup. And we're happy to sell that too, in the shower converter product as well. Like we're all about bringing access to this, perhaps the most powerful therapeutic available to us: light therapy and heat therapy.
Yeah, you made good points with it. DIY doesn't mean it's necessarily safe. Like thinking back to my RV days with the painter's canvas and what I did with the PVC. If the bulbs broke, that would have been a disaster. Or if it fell on me because I didn't secure it properly, that would have caused third-degree burn or something crazy. So I think the safety factor is often overlooked when you try to cut corners and DIY it. I wanted to ask you about minerals. You brought this up earlier, and I've experimented so much over the years with different ones before and after the sauna. Basically, now I'm just back to Kintone shots, those little ampules, or another brand that's kind of similar. And I just heavily salt my food with white Icelandic flake salt, and take Shilajit every day that I sell. But I'm curious your strategy there with the mineral aspect.
Yeah, you, especially when you use a lot of sauna, you definitely want to replace your minerals somehow. And the question is how to do it. And it's a tricky thing nowadays. It's its own conversation because so many of the mineral sources are contaminated. Like sea salt can be contaminated with radiation now. Some people say that Redmond salt's great because it's originally, it was a seabed, but it's on land, so it doesn't have the contamination from the ocean. There's other sources too, and I've tried a lot of different things. I definitely take Shilajit pretty much daily, and I always start my morning, even before I get in the sauna, with a glass of filtered water or distilled water with a half a lemon squeezed in it, and then I add in electrolytes to that. Sometimes during, like, at the beginning of the morning, but definitely I do the same thing all over again after I get out of the sauna. I'm actually trying this new brand right now called Yes. They have these quantum scalar charged mineral drops. So they have like a multi mineral, like, that has a lot of different, minerals in it, and silica and some other stuff too. Like, our bodies use in very low quantities gold and silver and so-called rare earth metals. And that was actually an ancient Egyptian therapy for healing the pineal gland, and calcification in the pineal gland is gold, supplementing gold. They had this really crazy cosmic gold. Dr. Ed Group talks about it. It's not monoatomic gold. It's gold that has all the different colors of the rainbow. It's like they use some kind of weird unknown technology harnessing sunlight to break gold down into these different colors. But all that to say that gold has unique properties in the body, and there's different sources of it. And I definitely add that, whether it's Ormus or this new brand, yes, that I've been trying out.
They were on the
Addition,
capstones, right? The capstones of pyramids. They were gold, is my understanding. A lot of what I've
it was
read.
Electrum.
Electrum.
So
Okay,
Electrum is half gold, half silver.
interesting.
The capstones were made of Electrum. Yeah, they were all stolen, but that goes back to Atlantis and like why are gold and silver so important? Because before the modern era, they weren't used for any technology at all, but they've always had this innate value. Well, the sun is associated with gold and the moon with silver, and the cultural reverence for these metals definitely dates to some antediluvian advanced civilization that maybe you'll have me on the podcast. We'll talk about it in the next episode. But gold in the body too. It's very interesting. So I'm exploring different sources of that. And then I'm always careful. I always salt everything. I'm a big fan of salt, but I use the sauna a lot. So I'm constantly getting rid of heavy metals and also some essential minerals too. And I'm always adding salt to things and careful what it is. And don't take, I never, or I try to always avoid like table salt. And I also don't recommend electrolytes anymore in these little packets because most of them are kind of cheaply made. They're just using table salt and putting stevia in it, whichever the brands are. There may be some good brands out there, but nothing beats just regular table salt or a regular natural salt, like a source you recommended, like an Icelandic lake or something where we know it's been heavy metal tested and it's clean and it's natural salt. Natural salt has like, especially sea salt has these, it's almost like 100 different minerals in it. And we use all of those in our body. So I'm very careful to address that. And I also take binders after the sauna, natural binders, like ozonated charcoal is like one of the best and super safe. Once in a while, I take EDTA, which is actually a synthetic binder invented in pre-World War II for chemical gas exposure. But it turns out that it's a very effective, very safe heavy metal chelator, and it has some implications in helping the body detox from some of like the newer forms of toxins that are out, including nanoparticles and stuff like that, like graphene oxide. Sauna also appears to be pretty amazing for detoxing these new things. So binders are
Hmm.
just a way that, hey, you got in the sauna, you detox all this stuff out of your cells, you sweat some of it out, but some of it goes to your bowels. And taking a binder of some kind can be really effective in helping cleanse the body. Also, bentonite clay is a great binder.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my guests talking about different things, the Oligo scan, he got me on Zeocharge, the Zeolite. So I've been taking like 30
Yeah,
grams
yeah,
of that
yeah.
for a while. And like,
Zeolite clinoptilite
yeah.
is also amazing. That's a great one to mention. Very safe and effective, and it just pulls the bad stuff out.
Yeah. Have you heard recently? It's been going, I think the last week, the nicotine helps with nanoparticulates. It sounds like you're aware of that issue.
Yeah.
And
Well, and the snake venom peptides.
mhm.
So
Yeah.
nicotine is very interesting. It's because it's binding stronger to the nicotinin, the whatever they're called, the acetylcholine receptors on the nerves, and so it kicks off snake venom peptides, which unfortunately are ever present in a lot of pharmaceuticals now. And that's been going on though for a long time. Actually, the Flexner report that we
Yeah.
mentioned.
Mhm.
So that guy, his primary area of research was snake venoms and development of like synthetic analogs of snake venoms. So the pharmaceutical industry has been using snake venoms for various things for a long, long time, and they're widespread actually in a lot of pharmaceuticals and those, and also it appears forms of nanotechnology like graphene oxide, quantum dot technology, and there's even newer nanotechnology that they're using in various things. I saw a presentation at the Healing for the Ages conference where they had dental anesthetic. It was this Italian research institute. They were the ones that originally tested I think it was the Pfizer vaccine and concluded that it was like the most of it was graphene oxide inside. Like there was a dramatic amount in it. So they had this dental anesthetic that has this crazy nanotech in it. It's these like little squares, perfect little squares that are the size of cells. And they have little squares inside of them. They look like the little transmitter antenna chips inside of these squares. And they're bobbing around in the petri dish. And they took a little bit of tobacco and put it distilled water in it, and then took one drop of that water and put it in with the nanotech, and it immediately, you can see it in the scanning electronic microscope. You can see it just immediately dissolve the nanotech. What was also cool at that conference, though, I should mention, if we're talking about nanotech, is bee pollen. So they showed another SEM video of bee pollen acting with this like hive consciousness in dissolving nanotech, like within seconds, like within 10 seconds. It's like fascinating that nature still wins. Nature still has all this stuff in it that's so powerful. So yeah, nicotine, tobacco's gotten a bad rap. That's mostly because of the commercial tailor-made cigarettes that are really toxic for many reasons. But the original tobacco of the Native Americans, it was used for a lot of healing, a lot of physical and spiritual healing for a long time. And it's now returned back to the forefront as potentially a way to keep yourself healthy in the face of exposure to modern like synthetic toxins.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And the AMA used the caduceus for a short time, which is the snakes around the staff, right? So it's interesting, the symbology. I don't believe that's the symbol anymore. They changed it. But yeah, I smoke a cigar a day. I love it. And I've gotten a lot of flack for that. Oh, you're a health educator and you smoke and you're promoting it. And say, no, I'm not promoting it. I'm just saying what I do and how I mitigate it with the polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons and all the issues that come with combustion, and your cheek smoking, right? It's not a lot going into your lungs like cigarettes. I use vitamin C and E, which you look up smoking, vitamin C and E. There's just tons of research on it. And then I also take a product for my glycolics. So basically a blood vessel supporting seaweed product. And I kind of created a strategy, and you could do halotherapy too, like breathing in a salt chamber. I have one here. Amazing after you smoke tobacco. So there's solutions, and it's like, for me, it's worth it to.
Yeah, and it's humans are not designed to do anything every day, and that includes drinking coffee. Number one, and number
I have to
two.
respectfully disagree there, but I'll listen.
Yeah. Yeah, and the second point is there's a world of difference between natural fermented organic tobacco, which is what a cigar is, as long as it's cleanly sourced. It's just the tobacco leaves are wrapped together tightly, and what people call a cigarette. That's genetically modified. It's grown really toxically, like all the conventional food is, and then there are so many additives put into it. It's like so far gone from what it is in nature that it's almost unrecognizable. Those things are toxic, but they're toxic not because of the tobacco itself, because of how it's grown and the chemicals, they're in that. Having said that, yeah, it presents itself as this powerful nicotine, particularly in this way to help keep the nervous system clean and to protect us. And you don't have to smoke it. You can use a nicotine patch, or you can, there's various other ways where you can consume nicotine safely, whatever. And I probably get my own flack for saying that, but the research was not mine. This was what was presented. Again, it was at the Healing for the Ages conference. It was Dr. Brian Ardis presented the information on the use of nicotine, and in the larger context of these just modern toxins we're dealing with, and it being really effective. So our ancestors and the Native American cultures, they don't smoke tobacco every day. They use it ceremonially, and they use it for healing. And I would say that you could take that same approach to coffee, maybe. I just don't drink as much coffee anymore. Drink more matcha now. I like it better. Once in a while, I'll have a coffee, but you don't need, there's other ways to keep yourself energized throughout the day. If you're doing a long work day, like I like rhodiola. I like some of these flower tinctures and things like that are just more gentle and not so intense with the caffeine. Some people like paraxanthium, which is kind of the goodness of caffeine without the badness. I think it's kind of cool too. You just have to find out what works for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm probably biased. I have friends in the coffee industry, so I started selling fresh roasted small batch coffee beans through my through my company. But I just do 2 espresso shots in the morning after breakfast. And back to the bioweapon stuff, there's actually studies showing that coffee stops the binding of the spike protein and the ACE2 receptors. So there is kind
Hmm.
of a synergy with coffee and nicotine. And I think we know that with philosophers and inventors kind of combining, the old coffee and cigarettes
Yeah,
to
and coffee gives half the world its daily bowel movement. So it's probably better than not having it, definitely, in general. And it's all, if you compare the toxicity of these things to petrochemicals and petrochemical based pharmaceuticals, there's really no comparison. So everybody's who's worried about caffeine and nicotine should compare that to how toxic all this other stuff is that is really hard to get away from. It's in all of our food and our water and everything else, and we didn't really consent to any of this exposure. So
yeah.
yeah.
Did you? It sounds like you went down some of the Wilson rabbit holes because he is coffee enemas. It's kind of, I've had a lot of shows on HTMA, hair tissue mineral analysis, and those people kind of have like a lifestyle that they talk about. And there's variance between the practitioners, but a lot of it includes near infrared light therapy, coffee
Mhm.
enemas, and then frequent hair testing to see your mineral ratios. Are you kind
Yeah,
of in agreement with a lot of?
I think hair tissue mineral analysis is really really effective. Taking the unwashed biopsy of a hair sample and using it with this interpretive science based on statistical norms to basically, like, based on what's coming out of the hair, what can we give the body? I think it's a very empirical approach to supplements and nutrition. I think it's actually really effective. I myself benefited from it for several years. I think it's cool. Yeah, and I think Dr. Wilson has many other recommendations that are really sound. I personally don't do enemas, and I'm not really a proponent of that because I believe that the body is designed to cleanse itself from the inside out, not the outside in. Like, yes, you do need to use soap sometimes on your body, but like soap doesn't get rid of acne. It's cleansing the toxins from the inside. And I think the same thing with the bowels and the large intestine. I think gut and like use of bentonite clay, psyllium husk, and like going on a cleanse and doing a modified diet. I think it's a lot more doing a parasite cleanse. I mean, you talk about the best thing to cleanse the body is like at least one long parasite cleanse to really get all that stuff out. I think it's a lot more effective than the use of coffee enemas and enemas in general. Some people love them and swear by them, and I salute them, and that's amazing. I think coffee, though, if you are going to consume it, you should drink it. You're supposed to, yeah, that's what your stomach's for. It's highly acidic. It's designed to process your nutrients. When you take coffee and you do a coffee enema, it's this very strong, first of all, you feel the caffeine immediately, right? And that's because the absorption's instant. It's not going through your stomach like it's supposed to, and the small intestine first. It's going right into this highly vascular, like bowel area, and it's a shock to the nervous system, and it's a shock to the adrenal system. And some say it's actually a shock to the parasites too. Parasites are really smart, and when they feel like they're under attack, they go and hide. And so there's there's this one microbiologist I'm a big fan of, Maria Chrysler. She has a company called Abetu Naturals, and she's a parasite specialist, and she describes it that way. And I tend to agree with it more, that it's kind of this shock thing. But I think also when someone's really sick, it's still shifting them and helping them detox. There's a lot of people who do cancer therapy. They just swear by their coffee enemas as being like one of the most powerful therapies they did. I personally don't do that, and I don't prescribe by that. But there's other things you can do. You can do enemas with other things. Like some people do enemas with milk, and some people
Ozone.
do and,
Yeah.
and some people do ozone enemas. Some people do urine enemas, which is its own topic. That's like a lot of ancient wisdom there in plasma therapy. But yeah, I think there's a lot of, all in all, the many of Dr. Wilson's recommendations are It's, about natural stuff and getting away and reducing exposure to the chemicals and the toxins. And sauna is a huge one.
The esoteric articles are fascinating, like the rogues and the different entities that he talks
Yeah.
about.
So some of that other stuff is, just take it independently with a grain of salt. But I think all in all, he's promoting natural wellness and the body's own intuitive healing and power. So that's great.
Absolutely. Well, let's jump into just a few questions if you're still okay on time. Just listener questions. I picked three of the good ones that people sent in.
Yeah.
Do you need to wear eye protection when you're using your product? Or I'd imagine just don't like sun gaze at it, like stare directly at the bulb.
We don't recommend any eye protection. None of our customers use it. When you're in the sauna, because of that rotation, you're only facing the bulbs directly like a quarter or maybe a third of the time. When you're facing the bulbs, usually you just don't stare directly at the filaments. Honestly, most people's their eyes are closed. They're trying to relax. So even with your eyelids closed, the near infrared light is going straight into your brain. And we want that. We want that healing. It's just a matter of not overdoing it, but it's not like an LED where it's one wavelength at an extremely high power. And they do recommend eyewear. This is a more gentle, broad spectrum light that is mimics the type of spectrum we see in nature and that our bodies can handle. And also, there seems to be quite a bit of benefit to the eyes. Increased nutrient delivery, structuring of the water in the eyes. There's a lot of research now in getting early morning near infrared light exposure being associated with improved eyesight and prevention of worsening of eyesight. And there's just in diabetic retinopathy reduction. There's so many benefits to the eyes. So we just want to get a gentle, measured exposure, which is by following the use recommendations in our product manual.
Awesome. A bunch of people asked, where can I buy incandescent lights? I know whenever I go into Home Depot and you look at the light aisle, I mean, pretty much all of it or most of it is LED and fluorescent lighting. And it's really hard to find incandescent lights now, right?
Yeah, well, you can go to Sauna Space and you can get one of our products and know that the incandescent bulb, well, it was definitely sneaky. It wasn't technically a ban. What they did is they increased the minimum energy efficiency ratings for domestic home use. So all of your specialty bulbs are excluded. Like our bulb is one type, black light bulbs, and all the specially shaped bulbs for like appliances are all excluded. And then anything below a certain wattage is still excluded. So you can still get fairly decent wattage bulbs online. They're just not being carried locally because they're there's a prerogative to get people to use LEDs, which have a lot of blue light. I would argue that's a little bit sinister, but you can get them all still online. You just have to look at it. And like, if you want to get a lot of light in your home and you can't get those big 100-watt bulbs anymore, you can still solve that by getting fixtures where there's more sockets, and you have 425-watt sockets. You're getting the equivalent of 100 watts. And so those are available, and you can get cool lighting fixtures that look cool and are beautiful. And you can get the exact amount of lumens that you want, the amount of brightness you want, and have it all be incandescent. And if you want to get the best incandescent, the best kind of glass is what's called neodymium glass. It's a certain type of glass that sort of has a little bit of a filtration on it, that the light that comes out of it is very natural looking and feeling. And that's what most of the best bulbs are, in terms of general lighting use, we used to be neodymium glass bulbs. You can still get those.
Interesting. The Edison bulbs, those are, well, some of them are LED, but a lot of them are incandescent, right? With the filament.
Well, Edison bulb refers to just the shape, that kind of
Oh,
classic Edison sort of conical shape with the round top. That was one of the original light bulb shapes. It was found that sort of what people associate with the regular incandescent home bulb, where it has a narrow stem and then it has a sphere on the top. that emits light more evenly and concentrically. And so those are more popular up until recently. Those are more used. The Edison bulb is just that shape. Um, but yeah, you can get them online. They're widely available.
You mentioned the methylene blue. Someone asked that what are the best synergies to use with incandescent light to promote tissue healing?
So if you ingest methylene blue orally, like Lumitol blue, what we recommend, Dr. Lawrence's product, you want to consume it at least a half hour before the sauna session so that it has time to be absorbed into your mitochondria, at least 1/2 hour. And then, yeah, get in the sauna and get to do a full sauna session, exposing all your body to the light. And you'll get the photodynamic activation that way, where the two are synergistic in improving mitochondrial function. The light helps activate the effectiveness of the methylene blue, and the methylene blue, in some ways, helps the light work because the methylene blue upregulates 3 out of the 4 mitochondrial proteins, and the light upregulates the cytochromes, the fourth one, which is third in the line, I think. So together, you get maximum mitochondrial activation in terms of the enzymatic activation. You can do the same thing with the sun. You just want to consume it before, at least a half an hour, maybe even 45 minutes, ideally, before that exposure to near infrared light. And you can also get droppers, again, Dr. Lawrence's product, Blue Eyes, where you have methylene blue mixed with gold and silver, and I think like peppermint too. And you put a drop in your eyes. And when I do that, I do it right when I get in the sauna because it's like immediately right there in the eye cells. It brings a certain clarity to, like, you can actually see a little bit better for a period of time. And there's a certain activation. So I recommend both those products. You can get other methylene blue elsewhere. You just want to ideally make sure it's pharmaceutical grade because of heavy metal issues. Those are my favorite ways to take it. When I travel, I pretty much take methylene blue all the time. Again, to protect myself from microbes and toxins, while I'm traveling.
Awesome. Yeah, I was seeing John was posting about the hurricane and the flooding in his house, and it's wild over there. Weather modification, right? It seemed like it.
Yeah, somebody was telling me that there was the same name of the hurricane that they experienced. There was a hurricane with the same name that hit Florida on the same day of the year, like either 25 or 50 years ago.
Wow.
So who knows? Somebody knows.
Wild. Yeah. Well, awesome, Brian. This was so much fun. I'm really inspired to use your product more. I've been playing around with it, but now I'm even more inspired to use it, be consistent with it, and even experiment with lighting my home with the glow and different things. I thought that was one of my favorite things you talked about. I think that's super cool to upgrade your nighttime environment.
Yeah, totally.
So sauna.space.com. That's the best place, right?
Just sauna.space.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sauna.space is the website.
Hmm.
You can chat, email, or call us there during the weekdays. And yeah, definitely check out the website. We show all the spectrum of the sun and our Firelight spectrum and sort of explain a lot of the benefits and stuff. And so that's sauna.space. You can also check out our Instagram and our YouTube at Sauna Space, so same name. And check out some of our content there. We do a lot of deep dives and testing and go into a lot of subjects. Had a lot of Instagram lives I've done for those of you who want to geek out more on this and sort of dive deep into it.
Yeah, I liked your chat with Dr. Stillman. That was a good one.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, that's a recent one.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Stick around as we close out the show. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Matt. This has been wonderful.
Light therapy is so fascinating. I could talk about it all day long. I think people get so emotional about it. There's a lot of noise in the health community that nothing replaces the sun. But when you live in North Idaho, like I do, where there's not a lot of sunlight for easily 1/3 of the year, that's not really practical advice. So artificial lighting, mastering the use of artificial light is a required skill when you live in a place like I do. And while everybody has their different beliefs about what's better and more effective, I don't think I'm going to change my mind that each type of light therapy has its own benefits. I enjoy the wood-fired sauna experience, as I mentioned in the show, especially if the grid goes down, then it's nice to have an electricity-free option. I do prefer the wood burning from the black carbon emitter panels. I definitely notice it's a different type of sweat. And then with Brian's product, the Firelight sauna, especially with the 7-bulb configuration, it just cooks me. It's definitely a more intense heat, which is why it's a much faster session. And I really liked his point about that, because sometimes time is important. And if it's just yourself, it's not a social setting, the goal is to sweat. So why would you do it in an hour or an hour and a half when you could do it in 15 to 30 minutes? And I've been playing around with 660 nanometer red light therapy for several years now. And those panels also integrate near infrared and mid infrared wavelengths. I have my favorite ones on my website. And there's definitely a difference in feeling between that and these bulbs. It's not that one's better than the other, they're just different. So what it comes down to is, if some people just want to get one or the other, the question is, which one do I choose? And for that, I think there's a lot of context involved. Are you off grid? Then you probably want to go with LEDs. If you're on grid, then the Sauna Space is awesome. And especially if you live in a cold climate, the Sauna Space is awesome, because it's like carrying around a fire with you with the little glow lamp. I've been playing around with it in my kitchen at night, and also with the idea that Brian talked about, minimizing overhead lighting at night. And I've definitely felt a difference. My house isn't set up for that, so I'm excited to get the bunker going and play around with more eye level lighting. But it's really bright. Even with just one glow light going in my kitchen, it lights up my entire kitchen. So that was one of my favorite parts of this interview. I'm really into environmental mitigation, especially while traveling. I've been talking about that for years and sharing really innovative things that nobody else was talking about. And I think this is a great thing to integrate. And it packs up well, especially if you're traveling by car. You could bring it to your hotel or Airbnb, and it's an awesome way to light your space that doesn't fatigue the brain. So if you want to check out Sauna Space, it's sauna.space. If you use my link through my website, matt-blackburn.com, it doesn't cost you any extra, and it helps support me and the show. On that website, you can also find my CLF protocol and all of my favorite products. I've really been enjoying the new carbon dioxide inhaler from Carbogenetics. My friend Steve Scott made a really cool machine that hooks up to a CO2 tank, and you could keep it at your office desk and breathe carbon dioxide anywhere from 1% to 8% from a mask. And I feel an immediate reduction in stress, anxiety, any kind of mental overwhelm. It's a really powerful therapy. So that's my current favorite device that I'm using 10 minutes a day, sometimes twice a day. Then my supplement company is called Mitolife. You can find that at mitolife.co. We custom built a 7-stage under-counter water filter that goes under your kitchen sink. I truly believe it's the best water filtration unit on the market. The filters are made right here in Idaho It's open source. It's really easy to maintain, and it's really affordable. It really blows these MLM water filter companies out of the water, pun intended. We also have a great shower filter. It's called the KDF Shower Solution. That's one of the best places to start with your health. The cool thing about our filter is we maximize the volume of KDF 55. So you go to Home Depot, you buy their little crappy filter, it's $30. It's not doing anything because there's multiple different types of filtration media in there, most of them which don't work at all, but it's just not enough volume to make a difference. So our filter is actually beefy. There's enough to filter out the chlorine and even soften the water. So that's called the KDF Shower Solution under the water tab on our website. We have grounding sheets. We have fresh roasted coffee, really clean shampoo and conditioner with no synthetics in it, and then a whole supplement line to choose from. And my CLF protocol kind of highlights the foundational supplements that I believe are important, but I do believe in more is better. So experiment, find the stack that works for you, where you don't get overwhelmed with taking too many capsules. Definitely helps to space them out with every meal. So I tend to take most of my supplements in the morning and in the evening with breakfast and dinner. Check out my Instagram. It's Matt Blackburn. I'm extremely shadow banned there. I'm working on doing one live every week. I just did one last night for an hour where I answer listener questions that people send in real time. And then there's the Mitolife Instagram page, which is an awesome resource of information, just endless free information about all of these different compounds and how to use them. So that is it for today. Share this with your family and friends if you enjoy the show. There's a new one every Friday. We'll see you guys next week. Stay supercharged.